Your seats, please. Is the mic working? That's a little better. All right, can everybody find their seats, please? I don't know if this is working or not. Yeah, it's a little better. Okay, good. All right, I hate to break up the networking, but we got work to do. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, thank you, Don. Good morning, everybody else. Ah, gee whiz. Oh, bunch of old people here. All right. This morning we have an excellent presentation for you. As everybody knows, and we have some new folks here, this is an educational forum primarily, but none of this would happen without certain of our sponsors. And I'd like to remember, but I can't, so I will read the sponsors that have participated. Catskill Catering, who provides our breakfast. Thank you all. Look, you got to take care of the people that take care of you, okay? The breakfast is important. Ulster Savings, Rondout Savings, Sawyer Savings, Mid-Hudson Federal Credit Union, Ulster Community College, Saley Ackerman, and of course the folks here at Media 721, whom we couldn't do this without their participation. So thank you to our sponsors. Today's feature presentation features two of our region's premier investors, financiers, and overall good guys. And we're very happy they could make it down. Bella and Dick, thank you very much for coming down this morning. We also, just so you have an agenda, we're going to do a short presentation about our sister organization, the Hudson Valley Technology Development Center. Then you're going to have to listen to me give a little talk on entrepreneurship for a little bit. Then we're going to do our feature presentation, and what we're going to do there is a panel discussion. And I will start to ask questions, but the whole philosophy here is that you get to ask questions. You get to direct the conversation and extract the information that you need to know that's important for you and your company's future. So with that, we will get started. Let me first introduce Brian Rye, who's the Business Development Director for the Hudson Valley Technology Development Center, who's got a few minutes. And I got a big hook and a microphone.
Good morning. As Les said, we're the sister organization, Hudson Valley Technology Development Center. And it's been a while since I've been here, and I thank Les for inviting me back. I'd like to make it back from time to time and give you more updates on new developments and new programs. But this morning, suffice it to say, I just want to do a very high-level and rather brief presentation. I have to take off right after this and go to another meeting. I apologize, won't be here to network and answer questions. But I invite you to look at our website, hvtdc.org. On there, you'll have every bit of information that I'm going to talk about this morning, as well as my contact information, Brian Rye, probably the most important contact on the site. Now, HVTDC, again, we're about hands-on business support services for small and mid-size manufacturers. We also work with early-stage companies delivering high-quality, cost-beneficial technical and management services. Basically, what do you need? If you're in manufacturing, we'd like to come in, make an appointment, sit down with you, help you assess your present state, and look at how we can get you to that future state. We'd like to look at management with you. We'd like to look at training needs. We'd certainly like to go on the shop floor and see how we can lean out the services there or the work in the process. We help to create new economic opportunities through the transfer of new technologies and advanced manufacturing processes. So in keeping with that transfer of technologies, we're giving away Les this morning. So anybody, he's yours. He's yours. Les is a go-getter, and he's, again, the sister organization here doing a lot of great work. I don't have to tell you all the things that he's involved in. It is very exciting. We've been around since 1988, and we have a long list of clients that we serve throughout the entirety of the Hudson Valley. In the areas of service, basically, along with business services, it's strategic planning, operational assessments, again, just high level. All of this is on our website. The lean services, which are 5S, value stream mapping, Kaizen coaching. I'd be more than happy to go in depth with these if you're not familiar. The great thing about what we do as well is that we do not pull you out of the work environment and into a classroom. We pride ourselves in bringing our team, analyzing at the situation there and training there on the job. It's a better way of doing business. We have thorough follow-up. We're always participating with our clients in an ongoing basis at the site, so we help to maximize everyone's time appropriately. Of course, there's organizational development. We do look at funding opportunities. I think everybody knows that there's a lack in that area these days, but where we can find them and they are appropriate and they can be applied, we certainly help you link with them. We can look at marketing and sales. The technology and the entrepreneurial side, of course, that's Les's mandate, and I think he's extremely skilled, once again, and letting you know about that. I think that's pretty much it for this morning, except I'd like to let you know about 3 new services that I think are rather exciting. Again, they're on the website, but we have engineering services. I was just speaking with a gentleman. Basically, we can help work on a project where you can basically hire some world-class engineering talent per job. And we've got a lot of people that we've harnessed throughout the Hudson Valley, and we're doing some exciting things with a couple of different companies. And it's to complement a company's product design development, with the applications team. So it's pretty thorough, extensive, and very exciting. Bob Inserto is heading that up. We found out recently that an interesting new service is through Galliard and its succession planning. There are a lot of companies out there that are looking at what they can do to set the company up, to put it on the market for sale. People want to transfer ownership maybe to members of the family or sell out their shares in their side of the business to a partner. We've got a great team that can come in and take a look at that. Jim Keogh's here. He'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. And we have Kristen DiClemente, who's, again, she's on the website, heading up new green services. It's very exciting. She comes on site and does a very thorough analysis of the situation. She can go into those details. So once again, hvtdc.org. Please call 896-6934, extension 3005. That's me, anytime. I'd be more than happy to talk to you, and I thank you for your time this morning.
Good. What was the website address?
hvtdc.org.
Such a struggle. All right. As you know, we were expecting the guys from Athens to join us this morning, but they have, we never know. They have serious business interruptus issues over there. They did lose their qualification yesterday. So they're also hosting a major conference over there this week. And if they've lost their internet and lost their public transportation and lost their government as they lost their currency yesterday, we just never know. So if they come online, we'll bring them up. And if they don't, we'll all wish we were sailing around the Greek islands today and just leave it at that. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you some information. I hope this works. I never know. Okay. We're going to start a series of sessions on entrepreneurship. And we're going to go and explore some of the origins, the effects, and outcomes of the phenomenon known as entrepreneurship. Personally, I'm as affected as anyone I know, having been a serial entrepreneur since 1972. The HVCFI represents my 8th startup. Not all have been financially successful, although rewarding, but some work and some don't. And that's kind of the risk and the motivation that inspires fools like me to continue with operations like this. The HVCFI itself is, for any of you that don't know, a not-for-profit organization, and it's designed to foster and nurture technology development, commercialization here in the Hudson Valley and beyond. So you got to trust me when I tell you that it's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but entrepreneurship is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Is it rewarding? Absolutely. Is it creative and innovative? As colleges, universities, corporations, and economic development agencies are being placed under stresses never imagined, the need for continual creativity is paramount. It could be me. Okay. Our panelists joining us today are going to provide some insights into the capital markets and how, all as entrepreneurs, you should approach them. How to get funding, how to look for funding, who to look for funding, where to look for funding, what kind of funding are you looking for? Are you ready for funding? Those are some of the issues that they're going to address. But as entrepreneurs, we need to do what we need to do in order to succeed, not just corporately, but personally, growth as well. And that's, to me, that's extremely important. So as part of this multi-session presentation, we're going to be exploring a lot of different things. And some of this I'm going to have to read because some of it is lengthy. I apologize for that. But it's good information, and I think I want to be able to convey it to you in the right way. There are innumerable quotes and definitions on what is an entrepreneur. The term entrepreneurship could be found from the French verb entreprendre, I said that well, and in the 20th century, though the meaning may not be that applicable today. The meaning of the word then was to do something without any link to economic profit, which is the antithesis of what entrepreneurship is all about today. It was only in the early 1700s when French economist Richard Cantillon described an entrepreneur as one who bears risks by buying at certain prices and selling at uncertain prices, which is probably closer to today's definition. In the 1776 thought-provoking book, The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith explained clearly that it was not the benevolence of the baker, but self-interest that motivated him to provide bread. From Smith's standpoint, entrepreneurs were the economic agents who transformed demand into supply for profit. That's much closer. In 1848, the famous economist John Stuart Mill described entrepreneurship as the founding of a private enterprise. This encompassed the risk takers, the decision makers, and the individuals who desire wealth by managing limited resources to create new business ventures. And here you have some of the hallmarks of what could be conceived as entrepreneurial. And it's going to be a long slide, so I apologize up front. In a series of surveys funded by the Kaufman Center for Entrepreneurship and Leadership, it was found that nearly 7 out of 10 youths aged 14 to 19 were interested in becoming entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is now the choice of the new generation as compared to the preferred career choices of yesteryear, such as being a doctor, lawyer, fighter pilot, or nurse. In a recent visit to Shanghai, an informal survey was carried out amongst Chinese youth by the author. The results of the survey showed that being an entrepreneur, especially in the field of computer and e-commerce, is perceived as cool and is an aspiration for many Chinese youths. Prior to the opening up of modern China, being an entrepreneur was perceived as the outcome of one's inability to find a good government job. Entrepreneurship in the world's two most populous nations, China and India, has through modern times been somewhat asleep. But in a new book, which I invite you to read, by Tarun Kahana, published by the Harvard Business School, it's called Billions of Entrepreneurs, How China and India Are Reshaping Their Futures and Yours. He says, both societies have woken up, and the results could reshape business, politics, and societies worldwide. Now, Gerber is the author of another book called The E-Myth Revisited, which, again, I invite all of you to read. It's an invaluable for anyone looking to be or understand entrepreneurs. According to the Kaufman Index of Entrepreneurial Activity, a leading indicator of new business creation in the U.S., the number of new businesses created during the 2007 through 2009 recession increased steadily year to year. In 2009, the 340 out of the 100,000 adults who started businesses each month represent a 4% increase over 2008, or 27,000 more starts per month than in 2008, and 60,000 more starts than in 2007. For that kind of a swing, these are dramatic numbers. Who is an entrepreneur? Most of us aren't old enough to remember the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s, but we've all seen the photos of soup kitchen lines, selling apples on the corner, and all the despair associated with that time. Well, here we are in 2010, and there have been comparisons by many pundits to that period in our country's history. But as most of us don't know, during that period, there were also great fortunes established. Fortunes established in oil, in steel, in mining, in transportation. Now, admittedly, some of these entrepreneurs, the new wealth, were created on account of conflict, namely World Wars I and II. Now, we're not in any way, shape, or form advocating conflict, but the result of those conflicts did bring us some very interesting technologies that we still live by today. We have cybersecurity. Let's just bring it to modern times. We have cybersecurity. We have GPS technologies, satellite communications, cable TV, all came out of that innovation period. And who can forget Tang? Remember Tang? Just pour it in water like the astronauts did, and it dissolved into pure, ugh. Okay. Ugh, that's a technical term. So these figures are in direct opposition to what was perceived to be the model of entrepreneurs back in the 1990s and early 2000s. The dot-com boom was manned by 20-somethings and fueled by funding groups looking to capitalize on their youth, inexperience, creativity and ideas to generate an enormous amount of wealth. Well, there were successes. Sure, we can point to Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And why was he a success? Well, books have been sold for years. But were books ever sold on the internet? No. That was a creativity, that was entrepreneurship at its highest. We heard about Google's, Facebook's, Twitter's, Zappos. I was with the CEO of Zappos at a dinner last week, and I gotta tell you, he's a very creative guy, not very inspiring, but he's a creative guy, and his development is selling shoes over the internet, how to fit them, but his emphasis is on customer service. His customer service reps will pick up the phone and stay on the phone with you for hours, if that's your pleasure, and not buy anything. But one day you'll come back and you will buy something. That unto itself is kind of a new paradigm of entrepreneurship service. I'm unfortunately old enough where I can remember service where you'd pull into a gas station and they'd actually clean your windows, knew where your dipstick was, checked the tires for air, and so on and so on. Service in a service economy has kind of taken on different meanings. Service economies now mean that you get a hamburger quickly at a fast food place. Is that entrepreneurship? Is that a new way of doing things? And what have we lost as opposed to service? New generations don't know the service that we used to experience. So is it up to us to reinstate that service like Zappos? I think it is. Tony Hsieh's done an excellent job in restoring service as part of the overall entrepreneurial experience. Business is a contact sport. The entrepreneur is not really interested in doing the work. He's interested in creating the way companies operate. In that regard, the entrepreneur is an inventor. He or she loves to invent, but does not love to manufacture, sell, or distribute what she or he invents. If they don't fail outright, most businesses fail to fully achieve their potential. That's because the person who owns the business doesn't truly know how to build a company that works without him or her, which is the key. So the questions become obvious. The entrepreneur is a visionary, the creator in each of us. We're born with that quality, and it defines our lives as we respond to what we see, hear, feel, and experience. It's developed, it's nurtured, it's given space to flourish, or it's squelched, thwarted, without air or stimulation, and dies. You know, one definition of entrepreneurship today is due to, in some part, the financial crisis that we're going through now. Who are entrepreneurs? Well, there are new people that are becoming entrepreneurs, some of which might be in this room. People that worked for large companies may have run a division or a department, and they were very good at running that department, and inexplicably and for whatever reason, they don't have that job anymore. So with that knowledge, with that experience, with that enthusiasm and the passion, start their own company. Well, they may have been very good at their function, which in some part qualifies them for doing certain parts of their business. But what they fail to realize is that there's more involved in being an entrepreneur. There are the sales, there are the marketing, there's the accounting. I hate the accounting part. There's the distribution, there's the hiring, there's the firing, and everything else that goes along with running and operating a business, which are things that they don't know how to do. So to recognize what you know, what you don't know, and you don't even know to know what you don't know, is where organizations like Center for Innovation, Technology Development Center come in handy. And we're going to continue this discussion over the next few sessions. In our next installment, we're going to explore the evolution and integrated activities from which your business must survive: innovation, quantification, and orchestration. These are essential components into what happens in operating a business, and to see if you have what it takes, both on the knowledge, the passion to operate a business, and to begin your self-analysis and thinking, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to call? Should I do this at all? And those are very important questions. So we'll begin to have this over the next several sessions, and we're going to explore not just entrepreneurship, but we're going to get into innovation, and we're going to get into different philosophies on how to be successful at these endeavors. So now what I'd like to do is I would like to introduce our panelists, and I'd like them to come on up. You're going to have to share a microphone. Can you two do that? Uh-oh, he's losing money. Leave it on the floor. Oh, he's losing his buttons. Okay. This morning, and what I'd like them to do is to introduce themselves to you, let you know who they are, what they do, where they've come from. Bella, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I'm Bela Musitz, and I'm one of the partners in a venture capital firm called iCANny Venture Partners. We're based up in the Albany area, and we do early stage investments in technology-enabled companies. So what that means is we write checks somewhere between $500,000 to $2 million as kind of a first or initial investment in the company. We have made 15 investments all across New York State, so we have a focus within the boundaries of New York State. Out of those 15 companies we've invested in, we've had one go out of business. We've sold 4 of them, and we have 10 left. And they range from a sector perspective from medical devices to material companies to software companies to what I would describe as internet-enabled businesses. And we are now in the process of launching a seed fund, which would focus a little bit earlier. I can do that. Okay.
Our audience out there.
Is this the working?
Yes. You can use this mic also.
Okay. I just want to roam around and get questions from the audience also.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, boy.
Now we're done.
Now you've done it.
Dueling
We
banjos.
do a 4-part harmony.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there, and Dick?
Good morning. Dick Frederick, 28 years in healthcare, made a transition in the early 90s to internet-related businesses. I've done a number of businesses, startups, as well as turnarounds. Founded a company in 2001 called Autotask. It's located in Albany. It was a business that basically a partner and I started in his den. And today it's about a $20 million business with about 130 employees worldwide. It sells a web-based service, software as a service product. It was built for the internet, sold on the internet, serviced on the internet. Of the probably 3,000 or so customers that the company has today, probably less than 5% of them have actually seen somebody from Autotask face-to-face. So it's an interesting business model. I think when we started it, we were pretty much told it'll never happen. You can't sell a $10,000 a month product to somebody who doesn't see you. But I think that we've proven that that can be the case. I've also started a couple of other businesses. I'm involved now in a lot of early stage consulting. Right now I'm working with a group of folks in the Albany region to create an angel fund that's a managed fund. We had a fund in the community which was called T-Van that was a supper club. Basically went in, made a presentation. If people liked you, they would contact you and work one-on-one with you to create some funding. That model pretty much has died out over the last few years. And so now we're trying to raise $1.5 million fund that would service, I want to call it Tech Valley, but really extending from the north, Glens Falls south to the Hudson Valley. Initially targeting individual investors for $25,000 apiece, hoping that we can bring in about $1.5 million through that channel, and then widening that to include CPA firms, law firms that specialize in IP and early stage companies, hoping that they would invest as well, and eventually bring some banks into the fold so that we have a pretty broad range of services. We'd like ultimately to get to about $3 million in our fund, and we would really be a precursor to what Baylor would be doing in his seed fund. So whatever risk Baylor's talking about, we're multiplying that a few times, and really looking for companies that are just past the friends and family stage of their funding and beginning to look at bringing their product out into the street and trying to generate revenue with it. So very early stage companies, pre-revenue for the most part. And in addition to that, I'm also trying to raise a seed fund. We never have enough money to fund any of our local businesses, and that obviously is a much bigger challenge. It would be in the $25 million range. And a separate initiative from what I'm doing.
So I think we've got some qualified investors. People who have been there, done that, understand the mechanisms, understand what to look for. And first questions that come to mind, here in the Hudson Valley, we have a technology accelerator. Have either of you worked with incubators and or accelerators in finding companies? Dick?
I have. Unfortunately, in the Albany region right now, I would say that we really don't have a very strong acceleration or incubation ethos. The primary center that we had for a long time was at RPI, and that's in the process of being restructured. Baylor can speak more directly to that since he was involved in that incubator when it was very active and very effective. So more of what's going on right now from my perspective is, I want to call it virtual incubation, where individuals such as myself and others are kind of bringing their talents out to the companies and trying to assist them in accelerating their growth. And it's focusing on management, what are the next steps that you need to be taking at this point in your development, looking at marketing opportunities, who you're selling to, do you understand your market, your customer, your selling strategy, what's your pricing methodology, and eventually funding. And so there's a little activity around that. Les has been involved with a new venture that's happening out of the Nano Center in Albany, and I think that's a good initiative. But we really need to refocus in the region to develop stronger centers of innovation and acceleration for these early stage companies.
Baylor?
So I think that incubators play a key role in helping kind of lift the overall entrepreneurial environment within a particular region. Incubators as well as economic development agencies, both at the state level or the local level, they all play an important role. And you know, I travel all across the state of New York looking for companies to invest in. And I'll speak a little bit about Rochester, because right now Rochester is, from my perspective, one of the best places to go fishing.
And they're online here this morning, just so you know, RIT.
Well, I didn't realize RIT was online. So, and one of the reasons that Rochester is a really good place to go fishing is they have a very strong kind of network and infrastructure that if you raise your hand and you say, I'm thinking about starting a business, there's people that can help you. And it's an organized infrastructure. So it's not like you raise your hand and then you got to go to the yellow pages and call 15 people before you figure out who actually the right person to talk to is. So they've kind of pulled all those organizations together. So they have that element, which I think is a very important element. And they have several incubators in Rochester, and they're integrated well with the local, county, and state and municipal economic development support structure. They also have two very strong universities there, that both of which have entrepreneurial activities and kind of an entrepreneurial environment. And they have a very active angel network of high net worth individuals who are willing to write a $25 or $50 or $100,000 check to help fund the business to get going. So I think from my perspective, that's an example of where they have all of the necessary ingredients in order to help launch and grow entrepreneurial businesses. The one other thing I'll add is, and it was in one of your slides, Les, where they also have a couple big companies, Kodak and Xerox and Bosch and Lomb, that are shedding employees. So people are finding themselves in a position of either I need to move or maybe I'll start a business. And the Kauffman Foundation has done lots of work in trying to understand why people start businesses. And sometimes it's because of the divorce, sometimes it's because of a death of a spouse or something else going on in the family, or you lose your job.
But obviously, the paradigm has changed over the last few years.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
In the early 2000s, late 1990s, the average age of the entrepreneur was 20-somethings, 30-somethings. Have you seen a shift?
Oh, clearly. The 1998 to 2001 is an anomaly. Okay? That's not steady state. It's a huge kind of blip or bubble, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So that anomaly is not what kind of normally happens, either from an investment perspective, from the behavior of, you can't judge behavior if you only look at 1998 to 2001. You will, if you were a Martian and landed on the Earth and judged kind of investment criteria and entrepreneurism in that narrow time band, you'd get a totally whacked out picture. So entrepreneurs, but I will say, and you said this in your talk as well, when I got out of grad school in the early 70s, it was much like the example you gave in China. If you as a technical graduate, engineering graduate, couldn't find a job at IBM or General Motors or General Electric or Procter & Gamble, and you started your own business, it was almost looked down upon. It was like, what's wrong? You couldn't get a job with IBM? You're not good enough? Whereas that has shifted. And I think what is a good outcome of 1998 to 2001 is that it has changed people's kind of willingness to try something like that, particularly for people graduating from school. So I think you see a lot more entrepreneurial activity at the 20-something-year-olds now than we did previous to the bubble, but still certainly not at the high levels and abnormal levels it was during the bubble.
So when you guys are looking at a company, somebody walks into your office, maybe he has a little bit of gray hair or in some cases not much at all. What are the first things you're looking for? Is it the technology? Is it the prospects for the technology? Is it the intellectual property? Is it the management team? Is it the experience? How would you rank them? Dick, what's the first thing you're looking for?
That's an excellent question, and I can tell you that I've learned this lesson over time, and it's cost me a lot of money. I don't look at the technology, I don't look at the product, I don't look at the service until I evaluate whether I think the person sitting in front of me has the skills, the ability, and the interest, and the guts to take it forward. And by that I mean, once you jump off the diving board, you are either going to sink or swim, and you better be prepared to swim.
And you better make sure there's water in the pool.
Right. And I think that what happens a lot of times is that people have this great notion that entrepreneurism is easy. You have an idea, you open the door, you start to go out in the street, and people flock to you and throw money at you. And that is so far from the truth. Anybody who's in business knows that that doesn't happen that way. And I think that unless you are prepared to be a manic depressive schizophrenic, which is my definition of an entrepreneur, every day you have extreme highs and lows, and they occur within seconds of each other, and be able to cope with challenges that go beyond anything you've ever imagined, you are not going to be successful. And I think one of the points that I would make, and Bela touched on it, is it's not about money. It really isn't. When somebody comes to me and says, I need X, Y, Z to get my company to the next level, I often find that they're not ready for the money. They're not ready for the money because they don't know what they're selling and who they're selling it to begin with. They don't know what it's going to take to get to the next level. And what I'm assessing when I'm talking to that person is whether they're willing and able to take direction. Because if they think they know it all, and many of them do unfortunately, they are not going to be successful. Because you're a great scientist, an inventor, a technologist, or whatever, it doesn't make you a good CEO. What it makes you is an opportunist. It gives you the chance to be successful if you can put a team around you and you are willing to understand that it's not all about yourself. And a lot of entrepreneurs come to the table with the notion that it's me. It happens because I'm the smartest guy in the room, and the rest of you folks who I'm trying to sell my product to just don't get it. And they keep looking for the person who's quote-unquote going to get it. So I evaluate the person that I'm sitting there, and once I understand that I think this person has what it's going to take to make this happen, then I'll start looking at the rest of what it is that they're trying to offer me.
Bela, what do you
Question?
think?
Yes.
How important to you at that stage is whether or not that person has done it before?
Not all that important. I mean, I think it's certainly an aspect that would help. And I can tell you from my own experiences, I've been run over by a bus a few times, and you do learn from that. But there are people who haven't learned from those experiences. Sometimes it's not that important. It really is more about the person's passion than it is anything else. And I think that they've got to have 100% commitment, 150% commitment to make it work.
So I think I have a lot of common elements when I think about this question to what Dick said, but I think I'll talk about it just slightly differently. The first thing you have to remember is that from a venture capital perspective, a very small percentage of the total number of businesses that get started are really applicable for venture capital investment. And part of my comments, I hope, will help explain why that is. Unfortunately, venture capital gets a lot of the PR. So people often think, well, I got to go raise venture capital. And that's,
So what are the differences between
and-
angel and venture?
So venture capital is all about money, and it's all about me making money. Because here's how the model works, okay? It's probably against union rules for me to tell you this, but this venture capital firm, High Peaks, is my fourth startup, okay? I had a business plan. I went out and raised money from individuals and pension funds and university endowments and banks. And I said, you know what, instead of sending all your money to Fidelity, send me some of it, and here's the things I'm going to do with it, and I'm going to return back to you more money than I gave you, or that you gave me, excuse me. And so my business is all about making money, and it's very easy to judge how well I'm performing. Just like Morningstar can rate all the mutual funds, and it's very easy. There's something called Cambridge Associates that rates all the venture funds. So it's very easy to see how I perform. So for me, when I look at whereas angels, and I'll let Dick talk about that later, oftentimes have different criteria for why they invest. But for me, it kind of goes this way. Venture capital investment is usually for somewhere between 3 to 7 or 8 years in length that we're going to have a relationship. So it's when I look at that entrepreneur sitting across the table from me, I ask myself the question, do I want to work with this person for the next 3 to 8 years? And if the answer to that question is no, All those other things like market, technology, et cetera, don't matter. Because it's sort of like we're going to get married. Now, we know we're going to get divorced, right? We know that's going to happen at some point in time. And hopefully it will be a happy, successful divorce and we're all going to make a lot of money, okay? So that to me is the fundamental number one question I ask myself. And having been on the other side of that table on numerous occasions when I'm trying to start a business and talking to venture capitalists, you as an entrepreneur should also ask yourself that question. Don't accept money just because someone's willing to give it, okay? Because you're giving up a lot of other stuff besides money. So, assuming that we both agree that we'd like to get married, at least for some period of time, then to me the important parameters are the following. It's the product or service, not the technology. Technology may play a key role in that, but you have to be able to articulate to me what your product or service is that people are going to want to buy and why they're willing to reach into their pocket and take out money and buy your product or service.
Is it true that the myth of venture capitalists, angel investors, is that you've got stacks and stacks and stacks of business plans on your desk? I mean, how many do you look at one time?
So we are a small venture capital firm located in Albany, New York. We evaluate, means we receive somewhere around 225 to 250 business plans a year. Out of those, we typically make 2 investments. So your odds, I think, are better at going to Vegas to raise money than coming to see me. Now, out of those 250, a half of them are, you know, I can read the first 3 pages and say this isn't ready for venture capital or it's not appropriate for venture capital. So there's a high fallout rate, right? But out of those, the half that are left, and people say, well, do you read the whole business plan? And I say, no, I don't read the whole business plan. I read the first 3 pages, right?
The
So
executive summary.
whatever's on the first 3 pages, okay? And you'd be surprised what you get on the first 3 pages. Sometimes it's, you know, I was born in Poughkeepsie in 19 blah, 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 and I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. So it's the first 3 pages. And based on that, so you got to sell me in that first 3 pages. And I'm going to do one of 2 things on that, after reading that first 3 pages. I'm either going to put it in the trash, or I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. And I'm going to say, hi, this is Bela Musitz from High Peaks Venture Partners. You sent me your business plan. Tell me about your business. And then I'm not going to say another word, and I'm going to listen. Okay? And people say, well, why don't you read the whole plan? Well, I don't know who wrote the plan. Maybe you hired somebody to write the plan. You know, maybe you hired Stephen King to write it. I don't know. Right? So I'm going to call you. And so I want to hear about the product or service. I want to hear about how big the market is. I want to hear about who your competition is. And I want to hear something about the team. Now, I do want to go back to my first point of we're going to get married for a little while, right? So I have to have confidence that for the next 12 to 18 months, you can lead this business. But I don't have to have confidence that you can take it to where it ultimately needs to get for me to get an exit. Because that problem I can fix, right? We can bring in another person to run the business. But if the market's not big enough, I can't fix that problem. Or if the product or service doesn't, you know, people are not going to buy it, I can't fix that problem. But I can fix the management problem, right? But I don't, and if I have to fix it, I will, but it's always disruptive and it's always costly. So I'd prefer not to. And I certainly have to have confidence that you can kind of take this business for the next 12 to 18 months and grow it to where it needs to be.
Dick, what about you? How many do you see, and what are your criteria?
Well, again, I think the important thing here is to notice that there's a difference in where we're kind of catching these companies and what's important versus the stage that a company's in. So I see a lot of companies that are kind of just percolating along. They've got a great idea. They may have taken it to the next level, but they're kind of stymied as to what to do at that next point in time. So I work with them to try to refine what it is they're trying to do and who they're trying to do it with. And I do agree with Bela on the fact that it is a marriage. I can tell you this, that I pitched Bela when we were starting Autotask, and he told me that he didn't think it was something that was worthwhile. And it didn't fit into his wheelhouse, which is great. We raised $14.5 million in that company. And I will tell you that at the end of the day, we probably made a mistake when we took our last investment because we took the wrong partner in. And once you're with them, you're with them. And you want somebody who not only is going to put the money in, but somebody who can help accelerate the growth of your business and gives you constructive criticism. So when you're looking to build that board, whether it's a board of advisors or a board of directors, take the time to figure out if these people who are coming to the table to be your partners really are going to be your partners and what their interest is in your business. So that's one point. The second one is really focused back down on the other point that Bela made about the business plan. One of my other hats is I teach at Union Graduate College, and I work with the capstone program. So I probably see 15 to 20 business plans a year that students actually work on with real businesses. And it is amazing to me how many fairly substantial businesses, ones that have $10+ million in revenue, have no clue what direction they're going in, and maybe are writing a business plan for the first time in their life. And so what we try to do, and what I try to do, is listen to what Bela tells me, and that is catch me in the first 2 or 3 pages. So the business plan, while it might be 40 or 50 pages in length, to me is a great exercise that you need to go through and develop all the information and criteria and understanding of what it is you're doing, and then be able to synthesize that into a 2 or 3 page standard business executive summary that tells everybody who you are and what you're doing and how you're going to get there in a very straightforward way. And Bela, through his reading of hundreds of plans, can tell you that it's an exercise that most people fail at because they don't understand what the important points of their business are, and that's almost a defining moment when you're reading that plan. You can look at it and say, this person really doesn't understand what it is they're doing, pass, I want to go to the next company. So the focus for me is really getting that individual to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, and putting it down in some format that convinces me that they actually know where they want to go with this business. And that's not an easy process.
So you would agree that business plans are not measured in pounds, but in the content?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, in today's world, Bela doesn't have the time, nor does he have the interest, and I don't either, to be honest with you, reading a 40 or 50 page business plan. But I'll tell you what, I want to know that somebody has written one. And I want to know that it's been written by the people who are running the business, not by some consultant that they hired. Great to have somebody write a business plan for you, but if you don't understand your business and your market and your services, you're not going to be successful. You just won't be.
So let me just make one other comment.
Please.
And talk a little bit about the process of raising money from a venture capitalist, right? So I read your first 3 or 4 pages. I liked it. I called you up. We had a good conversation on the phone. Then I'll probably come visit you and maybe meet with you for half a day, kind of kick the tires, meet the other people of the team, kind of get a better feeling for kind of how the whole environment feels and et cetera. And if that goes well, I'm going to invite you in to meet myself and my partners and say, you know what, you got 45 minutes to stand up in our conference room and tell us about your business. And that 45 minutes, actually the first 5 minutes of that 45 minutes will play a major key role in the decision of whether we invest in that business or not. Okay? And we have what we call a 10-minute rule at High Peaks, where for the first 10 minutes, we will not interrupt you. Okay? And we instilled this rule after we didn't have it and we found out that we needed it because we just went crazy before the person even put the first slide up, right? So we have this 10-minute rule. So you have 10 minutes to go. And after that, who knows what's going to happen? We're going to ask you questions about all sorts of stuff. And here's why. Because I'm not looking for a canned pitch. I'm looking for how you think, how you solve problems, and what kind of your thinking process is, and how you think about the competition, how you think about markets, right? And so that's why we're going to ask you questions. And your ability to respond and deal with that pressure, because it is a pressure situation, clearly, right, is absolute. That's more important than the business plan. Okay? It's gobs and gobs more important than the business plan. And I've started 3 venture-backed businesses. The first one I started in the late 70s, I raised $3.5 million from Warburg and Pincus, which was the first venture firm I spoke to. I said, God, this is easy. Made one pitch, raised $3.5 million, right? And two and a half years later, we were out of business. We spent all the money, right? The second company I started, which was later, and was a spin out of IBM Research where I used to work, I talked to 67 venture firms before I raised my second chunk of financing. So I got 66 no's before I got a yes, okay? But I'll tell you that I learned something from every pitch I gave, right? So I always wanted to understand why they didn't like the business and why they didn't want to invest. And then I incorporated, because I said, oh, gee, that clearly I didn't make that very clear in my presentation, right? So I changed it because it's kind of a living, that presentation is kind of a living document, right? And hopefully it kept getting better and better. So my point is that pitch, that 45 minutes in our conference room is much more important than your business plan. Now, if that goes well, I will then read every page of your business plan, right? And I will crawl through it, right? And by the end of the process, which typically takes 4 months or longer, in other words, from the first time we meet to the time you get a check out of us, if it's 4 months, you're really going fast, right? I mean, there have been companies we've talked to for 2 years because they really weren't ready. But 2 years later, they got to the point where we said, okay, we will invest. So it's a long process, but I will know everything about you, and you will know hopefully a lot about us before we actually walk down the aisle and get married and write that check.
There was a question over here. Neil, you have to speak into my ear so I can get you on the microphone.
Speak directly into your ear line.
Directly into my ear.
How's this?
Oh, good.
Gentlemen, I'd like you to expound a little bit on the downside of accepting venture capital and/or angel capital. And Bailey, you were referring to it beforehand. You talked about potential for change in management. Specifically, what I'm talking about, or what I have in mind, and you can certainly tell me more, is the degree to which you take board seats, the percentage of the companies that you get, and what that voting percentage means to the remaining shareholders.
Okay, great question. Venture capitalists only buy preferred shares of stock. We do not buy common shares of stock. And why do we buy preferred shares of stock? Because there's additional rights and privileges that go along with preferred shares of stock. We never want to own 50% of a business. We typically like to own somewhere between 10 to 30% of a business. So we are often minority shareholders. We always take a seat on the board of directors. We like to provide more to that company than just money. So from High Peak's perspective, one of my partners is really good at kind of new product introductions. He worked for a boutique consulting firm that did that all over the world. So he's really good at that kind of piece. I have another partner who's really good on the financial aspect, and I'm the technology, engineer, scientist guy who's kind of understands that piece. So as we say, between the three of us, we have a whole brain, right? And we bring that to the table because you as an entrepreneur want more than money from us. You just don't want our money, right? So we always take a seat on the board. We're not interested in operating the business, okay? But we are interested in helping guide the strategy and the key decisions in that business. The other thing to remember is if you take money from a venture capitalist, you will have gotten on a set of train tracks that says at some point in the future, 3 to 7 years from now, we're going to sell this business, right? And I'm going to take my blue pieces of paper that says Fred's High Technology Company and convert them into green pieces of paper that's saying God We Trust on top. That's my only goal. Okay, that may sound a little harsh, but that's my only goal. Okay, so that's the set of train tracks you're getting on. And I will do whatever I need to do to, at some point in time, maximize the value of this company and sell it, or go public, right? But most of the businesses we invest in end up in an M&A transaction. Okay, so in that agreement that we will have, in that preferred shareholders agreement, there will be certain things even though I control less than 20% of the business, there will be certain things that the company cannot do without my permission, such as raise more money, go into debt that's greater than a certain amount, right? It's a short list, right? Most of those decisions we want to leave to the board of directors, and that's the job of the board. But there are certain things that we want to protect our investment that you cannot do without our express permission. I hope that answered. So again, they're gonna revoke my union card.
So let me add to that, and I'll put my entrepreneur hat on for a moment.
And your angel hat.
And my angel hat. Angels look at things in a different way, and I'll address that in a minute. But in terms of the entrepreneurial hat, the comment that Bela made about kissing 60 frogs to get to some funding after you get your business going is an experience that we had as well. And we raised $14 million. When we got to $5 million in revenue and we were looking for our next bite of the apple, I honestly thought that we would make a handful of pitches and we would have people say, great, you guys got a product, you got a market, you got a channel, you got revenue. We're all happy about that. 65 pitches later, we had 3 people who were talking to us in earnest after a 6-month activity. So just because you're there doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. You still have to keep working at it very hard to get there. But once that happens, I want to talk about what really occurs from my vantage point when you have a venture firm in there. Yes, very clearly you better be prepared to find an exit for your company because that's the only reason that the venture capitalist is at the table. If you don't understand that, you're going to have a tremendous kind of bad relationship. You're going to continue to battle with each other about what you're trying to accomplish. You want to run a very profitable lifestyle business, and the venture capitalists could care less about how much money you make because it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money they make. So you need to understand that going in. And while there's a minority ownership interest in preferred shares, there's a majority control interest through the preferences that are given. And believe me that you will have a limited number of decisions that you as the entrepreneur can make once you have a venture firm in there. $50,000 limit on how much you can spend on any single application, hiring and firing of senior executives, and on and on and on. Many things get thrown into the term sheet, and you then begin negotiating about what this relationship is going to look like. And it's kind of like a prenup. At the end of the day, you're negotiating for the terms that you both feel that you can live with in order to go forward. And it's almost, to some extent, an adversarial relationship that gets started at the beginning. And you need to be careful, and I know Bella is very, very aware of this, that relationship has to be handled so that both parties don't feel like they got beat up. There was a win-win on both sides, but you have to understand going in there that it's not going to be a fun exercise. Once you're out of it, then I think you need to concentrate on how do we make this work in the most effective way that we can. In terms of the angel side of the investment, I want to use this word in a careful way. It's not as predatory. The goal of the angel investor is really economic development and job creation. And we're about putting more opportunities on the street than we are trying to look at our return on investment. People are interested in return on an investment, but it's done in a way that you're taking the best opportunities for growing businesses in your community and creating jobs and ultimately building those into bigger businesses. And so there's a little different motivation. I'm not saying that we're not cautious. I'm not saying that we're not going to go through a number of exercises similar to the one that Bella described. But at the end of the day, we're looking to get that business teed up to a position that either a venture firm can come in and help grow that business, or there's other funding sources that are available that will help that company get to that next level and actually go forward. But I will say this, and the point that Bella made is very important. Understanding that you have a large enough market to sustain your business is an absolute necessity. And I can tell you, I looked at a very interesting business proposal the other day that when I started doing the math on it, I said, I'm not sure that they can actually get any place with this business, even though I thought it's a green technology, has a perfectly fantastic idea that's laboratory proven. Okay, but I don't think that the supply product, it happens to be a green product where they're going to utilize some plastic containers and plastic products to turn it into a different product. I don't think there's enough source in the United States to actually make that business sustainable at any level. So people have invested $7 million in this company and are not in a position of being able to actualize on that investment. And so you need to look beyond the idea to determine whether, in fact, there's enough kind of running room to take that company to some realistic expectation in terms of the business.
I recall from my own experiences several years ago that everyone talked about the hockey stick. You got to have the hockey stick in there in terms of your business plan to present, to get credibility, to have something called market dominance, or investors that are not going to be interested if you can't dominate the market segment that you're looking to get into. How important is market dominance, and does the hockey stick theory still apply? Let me just give you an idea. We've had some companies that have brought us business plans where their first year they're going to do $100,000 in business, but by year 3, they're going to be doing $40 million. What's believable? What's not?
So the hockey stick, I find, is usually, the blade of the hockey stick is the horizontal part, and then the handle is sort of the part that's more vertical. Usually the hockey stick that I see is it's configured the other way. The handle is the horizontal piece, and the blade is the part that's angled up at some angle. So that's a more realistic hockey stick. A couple of comments. The financial projections, here's how I look at financial projections. I know that that's not what's going to happen. And you know that's not what's going to happen. The most important thing with financial projections is that they be believable. That's it.
But what constitutes believable?
Well, I'll get to that, right? Market dominance is not important from my perspective. Okay, from my perspective, what's important is, remember, I want to sell this company in 3 to 7 years. So what I want to look around is I'm going to look around in the sector, the industry sector you're in. And let's say it's medical devices. Let's say it's implantables for orthopedics. I'm going to look around at the M&A activity that's happened in that specific sector over the last 5 years. And I'm going to look at those transactions. How much companies paid? What multiples did they pay on? Right? How big did the company that was acquired need to get before they were purchased? Right? And those are kind of the financial parameters at a high level that I'm going to sort of apply to your business. And if I look around and I see that, J&J and DePuy and Zimmer were only buying companies that had at least 150 million in sales, and I'm going to look at your business and I don't see how it's going to get to 150 million, I can only see my way through to 50, right? It doesn't make a sense for me to invest. Whereas in a different sector, maybe in the software sector, I can look around and see, oh man, all sorts of companies in the $20 million revenue range are being acquired, right? So there's a whole different set of parameters that I can apply to how big that company needs to get. So I'm not looking for someone who's going to capture 70% of the market. I'm not looking for market dominance. What I'm really looking for is somebody who's going to look really, really attractive to a bigger company to get acquired. Because remember, I'm focused on that exit, right? And I'll use those parameters to figure out how I'm going to value this investment I'm going to make. By value, I mean how much I'm going to pay per share of stock, right, for your company, because I'm going to drive it from, I'm going to look at the exit parameters, bring those back to today and say, okay, this is how much I think makes sense. Now, the one comment I'll add to that about angel investing, because I think it's important, of the 15 companies we've invested in, I think 10 or 11 of them had angel money already in the company. So we oftentimes invest after angels have invested.
Are the angels happy to see you?
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
Because they get diluted.
Well, dilution isn't a big issue. What the big issue is, the angels often overpay. Okay, so we made an investment, just to put it in kind of perspective, we made an investment a number of years ago where the last angel round of money came in at a $90 million pre-money valuation. Okay? And what happens is the angels eventually run out of money and they have to go to institutional investors or venture capital. Our money, as well as a couple other VCs, we got together, we put in $20 million into that company. It came in at a $30 million pre-money valuation.
As they say in the trade, oops.
Right, right? So you as an entrepreneur should look at the total amount of money you think your projections say you need, then double or triple it, right? And say, okay, can I get all of this from angels? And if I can, then that's a great path to go down. That's a wonderful path to go down, and I would recommend doing that instead of talking to a guy like me. But if that's too big of a nut for you to get from angels, and you have to go down an institutional round or a VC round, then make sure you don't do things in the angel rounds that are going to need to get undone before the institutional investor comes in, right? And the dilution is, you know, it's one thing if you paid $1 a share and I'm paying $1.50 a share and you're not buying any shares in this round, so yeah, you're going to get diluted. But it's another thing if you paid $10 a share and I'm buying shares for $1 a piece, because that's real dilution.
But
Okay.
Dick, let me ask you a question. I can't tell you, the magic number that floats around is $250,000. If I only had $250,000, we can make this business grow beyond our wildest imagination. And that seems to be the number that rings out. Where that number came from, I'm not real sure, but predominantly that's the number. Somebody comes to you and says, we're going to develop our technology, we're going to develop our intellectual property, we're going to build a prototype, we're going to go out and get reps all over the country to sell our product if we only had $250,000. And I know you want 30% of the company, but would you take 5? I want to hang on, because in case we need more investment money. What do you say? What do you do?
Well, I probably laugh to begin with because I think when you start off, and I hear this a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, I say to somebody, how much money do you think you need? And they throw a number at me. And I say, that's wonderful. What are you going to do with that money? And they go, well, I need to do a couple of things. And they don't have a plan. So in the first instance, the plan that you described is way too aggressive. You couldn't do all those things for $250,000. So I don't think they've actually gone back to their business model and said, if I had 250, what could I do with it? How would I spend it, and what does my revenue look like? So I kind of go back to the question that you asked Baylor before about the hockey stick for 2 reasons. One is that the expectation when you have a software as a service model is that that hockey stick looks more like the second description that Baylor had. Very kind of slower growth and then maybe some uptick 5 years out because you really got the market moving and you now control more of that market. So you have to understand that when you're building a business model, that going from 100,000 the first year to 20 million in the second year is not realistic if you have software as a service as a business. But I then go back and I take a look at, and I would do the same thing if somebody said, I need $250,000. And I would say, how are you going to use that money, and what does the sales pipeline look like when you get to that $250,000 investment? Because I think what's important is to have a realistic expectation of how you can sell that product with the money that you're going to get. And I would say that if you're not going to use it for sales, I'm probably not that interested in it, because if you are still working through all sorts of development activities on your business and you need another 250, which probably is way short of what you actually need, you're buying yourself a significant amount of problem. Either they're going to be needing more money, which you may or may not be able to provide to them, or that product or service just isn't ready for the marketplace right now. But I think that when I look at the financial side of the house and somebody tells me they need money, I look at their sales numbers and I say, how many sales do you need to make every single month to get to the number that you're projecting? And then back it up and say, okay, what's your close rate on your selling side? And how many leads do you need? How many prospects do you need every single month to make this real? And when you start backing that up and you're looking at one close for every 10 sales calls, and the guy's telling you he's going to do 40 closes a month, and I'm looking at 2 sales guys, I'm saying there's no way you could ever make enough calls to even get close to this number, and it's not real. So every aspect of that business model has to be kind of taken apart and gut checked to see if it really stands the test of reality. And once you understand that there's some substance behind the business plan, then I think you feel more comfortable about working with a number that makes some sense going forward.
Yeah, and that's all about what I said earlier about the financial projections being believable.
Sure.
Right? And Dick kind of gave a great example. It's oftentimes on the sales side that the numbers just fall apart, because you do kind of a deep dive about, you know, the pipeline, number of salespeople you need, and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that's sort of at a higher level is if you're in the materials business and you have some new plastic or something, I'll look around that sector and I'll say, okay, here's examples of 5 other companies, and it took them $100 million of investment to get to being, you know, a for profitable, cash flow positive business. So how are you going to do it on 3? Now, maybe you'll have a great answer for that, because you've invented some new process that makes this particular material at a much lower price. That's great. But the answer is not because you're smarter and you're more efficient. Okay? So that's kind of the high level question we ask, is how are you going to be able to do it, whether it be 250 or 3 million or 5, when it takes everyone else 10 times that amount of money, right? So that's kind of the high level question you have to ask yourself. And then we also do the deep dive that kind of Dick talked about of, okay, looking into the, you know, every aspect of your business, from product development to sales to marketing to et cetera, you know, because we find that typically the revenue side is off, is overly optimistic, and the cost side is also off by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4, and you're just way too low on how much capital it really takes for you to build your business.
And we have a question here.
Yeah, Dick, I want to go back to something you said about economic development. And when you look at some of the government-backed economic development initiatives, it's all about jobs. But we're now living in a virtual world. The business plan may well be a team that's distributed. The jobs may not be concentrated in one particular economic region. Is that less interesting to you because that job creation may not all be local?
No, I mean, it's not really something that I'm focused on that much. I think the economic development money, and I know we have some folks here in the room that are in economic development, but what I found is that most of the funding that is there is very much silo money. There, for some reason, when the legislation was written, it's basically can't spend the money outside of your county. It can't be used in certain ways. And what I'm finding is we do live in a more global world, certainly a regional application, so that some of the funding that was there in the past actually can't be utilized to grow these businesses because you can't put it into the business model. So some of it's coming now out of federal stimulus dollars and some other things. So I think that that's kind of an interesting scenario. But the economic development aspect of it is, if it's good for the community, it's going to be good generally in the region, and I kind of look at that as kind of a process. I want to go back and just touch on one thing. I had some comments, discussion earlier, and we've touched upon it a little bit here. But I want to talk about the innovation aspect of early stage business and how to kind of some of the pitfalls that I've seen in the past. And the one kind of overarching issue that I see all the time is that the inventor, scientist, founder of a business creates a product or service that they want to sell, and then they head to the marketplace with this dogged determination that they've got the best thing in the world and everybody's going to jump over the table to buy it. And they're very reluctant to approach people who they think are going to tell them no. So there's this reluctance sometimes to actually go out and sell your product. They don't want to get out in front of people. They're sitting back. They're doing more development. It's not quite ready yet. It's got to mix the soup, do all those things. So that's one thing. They kind of get stuck in this loop where they're a little bit anxious to take it out and actually find out whether people are willing to pay for it. I think secondarily, when they get feedback from people and it's not what they expected to hear, they discount that person as not being a knowledgeable consumer, and they go look for the next person who might be more willing to pay for that product. I can only say that down the road, when you get 6, 7, 8 no's, and you haven't had anybody say yes, you better start listening to the customer to figure out what it is that's not working that will put you in a position to have a product that actually meets the customer's needs. And I think more than anything else, that reluctance on the part of a lot of entrepreneurs to listen to that potential customer is one of the largest reasons why I see those businesses fail, or they just get totally stalemated. They can't move forward. They don't have a product that the customer really is interested in buying, at least not in the form that they've tried to define it as.
We have one more question, and I think we've got Grease on the line, so we'll ask the one more question. We're going to bring Grease in, and then Bella and Dick will stick around for a little while afterwards. If you have questions, I'm sure you're going to want to inundate them with business cards, and we welcome you to do that. So Ralph, you had a question?
Bella, to follow up on the Rochester, New York, what does Rochester area have that the Hudson Valley doesn't have? Do they have charming politicians? Do they have hungry or unemployed engineers? In your opinion, what does the Hudson Valley lack? I mean, from vis-a-vis the Rochester.
Rochester has 2 major research universities. RIT has like 20,000 students, right? Which I never realized it was so big, but it's a big place. So there's a lot of creative minds there. The University of Rochester is there. The University of Rochester Med Center is an unbelievably entrepreneurial place. Lots of innovation comes out of there. They think of Rochester as the greater Rochester community. So it almost includes Buffalo, but not quite, and it almost includes Syracuse, but not quite. Okay, but they draw a pretty big circle. So they're not real parochial about activities. And I find that sometimes other parts of the state or other communities are very parochial. In other words, if you don't spend this money in Dutchess County, you are not getting it from me. Okay? And then what that leads to is kind of this kind of infighting and competition among people who really shouldn't be competing, because what you're trying to do here is raise the tide for everybody. And whether that new enterprise locates in Dutchess County or Ulster County or Greene County or whatever, really doesn't matter, right? The idea is to get a whole bunch of them here. And I think that's one of the things that Rochester has done very well. They've kind of removed those kind of territorial boundaries, and they have a great advantage of these 2 major kind of research universities, that's all kind of located there. And that, as the Hudson Valley does, they have a fair number of people who used to work for, Fortune 500 companies that are sort of looking for jobs. So can it be done without a research university? Absolutely, right? It's not a requirement. And I think it's kind of trying to figure out how to get people to work together on these things. And just because I'm from one side of the river or the other side of the river or live 50 miles north, it shouldn't matter. Right?
Howard, one last question, real quick.
Quickly on Rochester, coming from the telecommunications industry, there was a telephone company, Rochester based in Rochester, a number of startup telephone companies can trace their history back to Rochester Telephone. This just seemed to spawn a number of startups. So it's another example in Rochester.
And that's a great point. When you have a success, you have any big success, you can look at that company and the number of other companies that spawn from it. Whether you're talking about tracing IBM back to its roots, or up in the Albany area, people always bring up MapInfo. I mean, there's a lot of, and Rochester's a great example of that. Rochester has had a couple of big successes, right? Including Kodak and Xerox. And out of those companies came a lot of other small companies. And so it's important to figure out how to get that one big tent pole, as I call it, in the tent, because you're going to start popping up all these other smaller tent poles. And then all of a sudden you have this community that kind of supports itself, and it kind of snowballs, right? And that's exactly what happened in Silicon Valley. That's exactly what happened in the Boston area. They had a couple of big successes, and then from that spawned a whole bunch of other things.
Let me make one last point, if I can, Les. I know
Sure.
we're running
Absolutely.
short on time. I want to go back and address that issue about why is it different. And I think Bela hit the nail on the head. For one thing, we're very parochial in terms of how we do things. In the Albany region, we have 11 chambers of commerce. We have 23 economic development organizations. We have a whole host of other things that are going on, and everybody wants their program, their activity, their function to be the one that people recognize as being the best for whatever reason. And there's very little sharing that goes on. And an example I can tell you is I spent a lot of time on the West Coast when I was building Autotask. And if I were to start a business in California tomorrow, I would call Bela up and I'd say, Bela, I'm thinking of starting a company. And Bela would have had an exit along the way, and he would have said, great, how much money are you looking for? Write me a check, and then say, what product are you selling? I'll buy it from you with the company that I currently have and help you grow your business. And what I find here in our region in particular, and I found this with my company because we actually didn't sell in the Albany region because it got to a technical discussion all the time, is that people are unwilling to help each other grow their businesses. And many companies who were specifically the target customers who we were selling to would sit there and talk to us for days about why did you do something to develop your technology this way? Why did you use a certain database? Why did you use this format? It wasn't about the product or service, and it wasn't about them being interested in helping me grow when they could have. They could have said, great, I'll buy 10 licenses and tell you if it works or not. Instead, they chose not to, and I think I see a lot of that in our region. I don't know if that's the case down here in the Hudson Valley, but one thing is
pretty much.
learning how to work with each other. Absolutely.
It's something that we've been fighting in this region for day one, and I don't see any really quick end in sight. Working together is not something that seems to be widely accepted with not just counties, but politicians and economic development agencies, and sometimes even companies. And that's a shame, and that we've tried to bridge that, but honestly, we haven't been all that successful.
So one of the additional comment I'll make around that is if you take a look at Buffalo and Erie, or Niagara, which is all kind of in the real western part of the state, which went through hell as a kind of a community. But I think they had to go through that, because what they did is they have formed what they call the Buffalo Niagara Enterprise. And it basically encompasses all of the economic development agencies, all of the chambers, the universities, et cetera, all sort of kind of working together in one organization, right, to kind of help foster economic development in its broadest sense, as opposed to 23 different groups all trying to, none of them having enough power by themselves to do anything, basically, and all trying to kind of get credit for whatever they're doing. So there's a great example, but like I said, they went through really bad times before they kind of said, okay, we got to do something. And Rochester, if you think about Rochester, they went through some really bad times too. I mean, Xerox and Kodak are just mere shadows of what they used to be from an
And
employment
Polaroid.
perspective. And right. Well, Polaroid, I don't know if Polaroid was in Rochester or not.
They were a little further north.
Yeah. So anyway, there's lots of examples, right?
Yep.
So sometimes a community needs to go through trauma before it changes some of its kind of thinking?
Well, here in this region, we were faced with a very similar situation where this valley was dominated by IBM. And we had a similar situation in the mid-90s when IBM shut down a lot of these operations, and people found themselves in very different sets of dynamics, which is continuing to affect this region in multiple ways. In a negative way, yes, there were a lot of people that lost their jobs, but in a very positive way, it's inspiring innovation, it's inspiring creativity, it's inspiring collaboration and affiliation, which is reinvigorating itself right now. We've got a lot of things going on in this region, specifically in Ulster County, in Orange County, and Dutchess County, which are helping to reignite a lot of what's going on. I need to take a couple of minutes. We got John on the phone. Good afternoon, John. County.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone.
Are helping to reignite a lot of what's going on. I need to take a couple of minutes. We got John on the phone. Good afternoon, John. County.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone.
Are helping to reignite a lot of what's going on. I need to take a couple of minutes. We got John on the phone. Good afternoon, John. County.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone.
Holy moly. John, hang in there for 1 minute. We'll get this worked out. Can you hear me now? I can't hear him, but he can hear me. John, say something so I know you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
That's better. Okay. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. Very well. Very well. Thank you.
How's my friend Andreas?
Very good. Very good. Actually, he's very enthused. He's going up to Thessaloniki, where we have a symposium of young entrepreneurs, and we're actually getting a lot of positive feedback from that.
Excellent. Some of the questions I'm going to ask you this morning are from the agenda from the symposium, which I think will be helpful and try and bring a lot of these things together. Everyone, I think, is aware of the impact of Greece and some of the financial turmoil. It kind of reverberates back here to the United States. And just so everybody knows, John grew up in New York, so he's still a New Yorker at heart.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Some of the interest in Greece and with the YES organization and in entrepreneurship has been in distributing entrepreneur education. And there are several differences in many of the EU countries as to how to educate entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs. And one of the agenda items on the conference for tomorrow is startup entrepreneurship as the main instrument for sustainable growth in Europe. And John, how would you perceive that?
Well, the first comment, of course, is that there are differences among the European Union countries, but we could also look at that as a pluralism and as something that gives a lot of different ways to look at one problem, and hopefully a synthesis of all these different opinions will bring about a very creative idea on entrepreneurship in general. So we're hoping to look at these differences are somehow bridged. Specifically about Greece, of course, startup entrepreneurship is a very, very difficult situation in Greece up till yesterday, and we're hoping that in pushing this issue, of course, a lot of the political leadership, which we hope will be at this symposium, is going to look at this very, very hard and look at whatever suggestions we have made as far as helping startup entrepreneurship, because that is basically what is truly missing from Greece. There is basically no help for any startups in Greece. There are no basic business angel institutions. Venture capitals are backed by banks, very, very conservative investors, looking only for medium-level companies, trying to get them to higher-level companies and sell them off to make a profit. So startup entrepreneurship, it's basically the fire that's going to ignite entrepreneurship in Greece. And we're trying to make this a very big issue with the government and with private investors in order for this to start getting the publicity and draw the people, the skills, and the money that is needed to give it a chance.
Teaching entrepreneurship, teaching business planning, teaching about capital, teaching about capital formation as becoming part of the college university curriculum. Is that something that you're looking to achieve?
Well, as a matter of fact, some steps have been made. If we go back to 1990, when I was studying at the American College of Greece here in Athens, it was actually the only business school. Now, of course, a lot of the public universities are business schools, and they teach that. So I don't know if we can, and of course, there are a lot of private colleges that do that, of course, as well, business schools. And basically, that's where most of the multinationals get their executives from. It's from these schools. The point is that education needs to be more focused on entrepreneurship and people not looking to hone their business skills in order to become executives, either mid-level or high-level, but to become entrepreneurs. So that's basically what we're trying to get them done. Most of the skills of here are taught. It's just that people are scared because they notice the absence of support from the government in becoming entrepreneurships. It's not so much the basic skills. Of course, following the discussion that I saw before with the investors, a lot of the problems that they find, of course, are in Greece. Business plans, the quality, unreal forecasts. But basic skills Greek entrepreneurs have. It's basically pushing the issue not so far as the education, but institutionalizing certain aspects of seed capital, funding, guidance, mentoring, all those things that are needed to get a startup capital and a startup entrepreneurship going.
As part of the agenda, I noticed something on the agenda that is a little different here, and that was as part of the investor community were something called business brokers. What's a business broker and what's their involvement?
Well, thinking about what that could be, it's basically middlemen that bring together venture capitals and business angels, investors from all over the European area with startup companies or basically companies looking for funding in the areas of interest of these business angels. So it's basically middlemen creating either internet sites where investors can see business companies and view their business plans and investment plans, or actual middlemen creating events like startup days that we have here in Greece, where startup companies can actually present their business plans to investors. So I basically think that's what the business brokers are.
So it becomes a matchmaking.
Well, yeah, because things are very difficult in this situation in matchmaking. If we come down to the skills of entrepreneurs in Greece, okay, one of the skills is how to get funding. A problem that I've realized is everywhere. Listening to also to the investors that you had on before. So actually, they don't know where to find funding, and of course, VCs, which in Greece at the moment, since we have no business angels at all, community, backed by banks, are very difficult in getting out on the street and finding this inventor, this entrepreneur, especially at a young age. Very, very risky for them. They're not interested in that. So here comes a community of business brokers, let's say, who try to bring these people together, and due to this economic situation, that has to happen. We need to get people investing seed capital and startup entrepreneurs in order to get entrepreneurship moving in Greece, because that is the only way that we are going to get out of this economic situation.
The entrepreneur in me, and I can see Dick up here scratching his head, says, no angels in Greece. That could be an opportunity. Is it an opportunity?
Excuse me, could you repeat your question?
Is there an opportunity for angel investment, early stage investment in Greece and perhaps other European countries as well?
I believe so. Of course, in other countries, in Germany, England, France, startup and business angels, they exist. and doing very well, and we are in contact with most of them, trying to get them intrigued and interested in the Greek market. Of course, where there is no competition, there's a chance. Basic entrepreneurship. I mean, that's just it. In Greece, there are no business angel investors, nothing organized, nothing with the know-how of the business angels in any other developed country. I wouldn't even go forward to saying in the United States, where I'm sure that they have gone through many, many years of making mistake, correcting. But in Greece, no, we have nothing like that. We may have one or two private people or private investors that might know somebody, but nothing in an institutionalized manner where somebody could go up to them and meet them and talk to them and get a judgment about their business idea. I mean, just a plain judgment. Let's not even talk about funding. Just, what do you think about this idea as an investor? Give me some know-how. So no, they don't exist in Greece. This is something that we have been screaming about to ignite in Greece, to get this investor community, because basically they are the only community and the only investors that are actually going to look at high-risk investments, which is seed capital and startup entrepreneurs.
Now, just for the sake of the audience, the director, Andreas Stopnius, and John and I, we have been talking about for some time about extending our Hudson Valley Center for Innovation acceleration methodology to the YES community in Athens. And
yes,
one of the reasons that Dick and Bella are here is that we're going to be continuing those discussions and helping to foster not only investment in early stage enterprises in Greece and throughout Europe, but helping to find mechanisms for the good companies, for the ones that are viable, to help move and export those technologies here, help them get situated and be commercially viable, sustainable enterprises here in the United States, as well as their home environments as well. So those are just some of the initiatives, and Andreas is coming over here in July, where hopefully we can conclude some of those and come to some definition and put a stake in the ground and say, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it. So, John, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I appreciate it, and we will speak with you shortly.
Okay, thank you, Les. Thank you very much. Good day to everyone.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our presentation. Dick and Bela are going to hang out this morning if you'd like. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope this was productive for you and you learned something. Our next breakfast is going to be July 21st. It's also a Wednesday, 8 o'clock. We're going to take August off and then resume again in September. So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much to our panelists. This was great. You guys did a great job. And I appreciate everybody coming this morning. Have a productive day.